we have such a fun guest today on Live in the Know. In the early 90s, Maria Sansone was named the youngest reporter in the history of network television. After stints in New York and LA, Maria is now back in the Boston area as a reporter for NBC and Hub Today. Let's get to it with Maria so she can tell us about her fun new programs and also provide personal real estate advice to all the buyers out there.
So, welcome to Live in the Know. Today, we have a very special guest. Jared and I actually have a career crush on her, and we are excited to introduce Maria Sansone. So starting off today, Maria, we have a bunch of questions for you, and we're just so happy to have you here.
Well, thank you guys so much. A career crush. I'm blushing. That's great. I love what you do. I'm very interested in real estate, so I may have a career crush by the end of this as well.
Well, I'll get into this later, but Maria, Traci knows that I went to school. I was a broadcast journalism major, and my dream as a kid was to basically be Chris Berman. So a lot of what we're going to talk about, you truly are a career crush for me.
Wow. Okay,
Yeah.
so we can get insider baseball then. This will be fun.
That's right.
So starting off, Maria, how did you get into TV? Tell our listeners a little bit about your career path.
Okay. I will do my best to make a long story moderately short because I am a storyteller, but this one can get a little long. But how it all started, it was not your standard career path. I got started in television at age 11. I was the youngest sportscaster in the history of broadcast television. I think I still hold the record at age 11. But it all started in Erie, Pennsylvania, where I grew up. I was a big fan of sports, even as a young girl, particularly basketball. And I was at a local basketball game. I was interviewed by a local reporter and got into it, started talking about the ins and outs of the game. And he was sort of dumbfounded that this little, I'm tiny to begin with, but me at 11 years old, it's just like, so he says he had this crazy idea. He went back to the station and said, hey, what if we had Maria interview people on the news, the actual news, not like a kids program. And the news director said, Mike, because his name was Mike Gallagher, he said, that's crazy. This is the 90s. This wasn't where there was millions of cable channels and people doing all kinds of wild things. The news director said, yeah, that's a little bit crazy, but let's give it a whirl. So we launched a segment on the actual grown-up news called Down to Size with Maria Sansone. And I was a regular on our local newscast on Jet TV in Erie. And that started at age 11. And I was doing that for several years and got picked up by ABC Sports. And that's how I earned the title, the youngest sportscaster in the history of America, because I started covering the Little League World Series for them, which was, of course, a match made in heaven. I was the same age as the boys who were playing. And I was live with John Saunders and Jim Palmer and Julie Moran and like some of the greatest broadcasters, and got my first IFB and my first experience out in the field working in broadcast television. So not your standard path. Most people don't get discovered at a local basketball game in a small-ish town. But that's kind of how it worked for me. And then, of course, there's way more to the story and lots of ins and outs. But that's what kind of catapulted me into this career. And then I took it off into many different variations as time went on.
Well, it's funny that you said that it started at a basketball game, because we had a lot of fun. We had a lot of fun diving into your history and some of your older interviews. And of course, the big one that stood out to me, especially in today's world with The Last Dance on TV, was you did a one-on-one interview with Michael Jordan. So yep. How did you end up doing that, and what was that like?
So what was interesting about what was happening with me, because I was so young, when we asked for an interview, we were typically granted that interview. And that's a lot more than most people in a small market can say. So when my producer contacted Michael Jordan or Jim Kelly or Tommy Lasorda or whoever it may be, they typically got a yes because they didn't want to say no to a little 11-year-old girl. And I was starting to get a lot of press, and I was starting to get a lot of national press as well. I was written up in the Wall Street Journal. I wound up being a guest on the Tonight Show. So I was, what I say, I kind of went viral before we even knew that term. Things just kind of snowballed out of control. And so that was right about the time that I was interviewing Michael Jordan. So we got a yes from Michael, and it's kind of unbelievable now, the access that I was given. Of course, at that time, I didn't realize how special it was. I knew how big of a deal he was, especially being a young basketball player. I knew he was the greatest, and I got to spend time with him on the court. Then we got to go in the locker room where I tried on his shoes and had a good amount of time with him. Got to do my interview, and he was, of course, a professional and handled me perfectly. And all my questions, he was so professional and treated me like a grown-up, which I appreciated. And what was really interesting is after the interview, he pulled me aside. And I want to point out the timing of this. And if you're watching The Last Dance, you'll totally remember this. Mm-hmm. So I interviewed him in spring of 93.
Okay.
So he retired from basketball that same year. So several months later, I think in the fall, he retired from basketball to go play baseball. So the conversation we had makes more sense in that context, but he pulled me aside afterwards. And that day was extraordinary, not just because I was interviewing Michael Jordan, but I had a crew following me from NBA Inside Stuff. I don't think that show's on anymore, but I doubt it. That was like a big deal. And they were following him, doing a piece on me. So I had an entourage that day. I had my own crew, and then I had the crew from NBA Inside Stuff. And it was just like a lot of action. So after the interview, he pulled me aside when my camera guy was like breaking down and everything like that. And he said, listen, I just want you to know that you don't have to do all this. If this gets to be too much, it's okay to say no. And he repeated, just remember, it is okay to say no. And it's kind of not what we've been taught, right? We're always say yes to everything, try things, say yes. But now in context of what was going on in his world,
yep,
it makes perfect sense. It's almost like he was projecting, on me. He had played basketball his entire life, loved it, and then got to a point where he was done. He was totally done. And so he gave me that advice, and I took it. And a few months later, when I, maybe within 6 months or something, I was starting to go into high school, and I didn't want to be in TV anymore. And so I decided to say no to some things. And the first thing I said no to was Oprah.
Whoops. But she's no big deal. It's okay.
No big deal. No big deal. In the scheme of my life, this is one of those big turning points where I finally was in control. I was scheduled to be on the Oprah show. She was doing a special on extraordinary kids with talented in different areas. And it was the summer that I was heading into high school. And I wanted to start preparing for the high school basketball team. I wanted to be a normal kid. I didn't want to miss the last day of school. I was going to miss the last week of my 8th grade. I had been with those kids from kindergarten through the 8th grade. And so my parents said, if you want to cancel, you're going to have to pick up the phone and call the producers from the Oprah show yourself. And I'm like, at that age, I didn't even want to call them for a pizza, even being on national TV didn't bother me, but picking up the phone and calling someone to talk to them. Ugh. So I got the cordless phone, beating myself, went in the hallway and called the producer from the Oprah show and said, school's too important to me. I want to be there for my last week of school. I'm going into high school, and I'm going to have to pass. And finally, the people around me realized that I meant business. And they said, oh, she's really serious about this. You really do want to take some time off. So it was, because it was always just one more thing. Well, we had agreed to this, and well, this thing's a charity, and this is, and it's like, okay, you just kept doing the one more thing, one more thing. And this was me finally saying like, hello. So I was able to retire as well for a short period of time, and went to high school, made the basketball team, which was a huge accomplishment for being 5'1" in a very competitive all-girls school. That basketball was number one. And then when I was ready to get back in TV, I came back on my terms, and it felt very different as I was when I was older. So
that's awesome. Well, Michael Jordan had an impact on your life. That's amazing.
he did. And I'm loving The Last Dance.
It's amazing. It's awesome.
He is ruthless. Like, I mean, I've never seen him in this way. You know, he's just sort of the man, the myth, the legend.
Yeah.
But his like strategy behind everything, and the way he networked, and the way he understood all the players, and it's amazing. Amazing. His dedication just blows your mind.
So Maria, I have to tell you, and Jared will support me on this, is that it amazes me how much confidence you had in front of the camera at such a young age. You know, I can tell you now that I don't like even being in front of the camera now. Like, this is so out of my comfort zone. So I can fully appreciate, you know, how amazing it is that you did it at such a young age, and that you do it so seamlessly and what seems like at ease, you know, now.
Yeah.
So it's cool to watch.
Well, I have an advantage because I did grow up in front of the camera lens. So I explain it as kind of learning a language at a really young age.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of a second language for me. For a long time, when you know, things were uncertain and you don't know who your friends are, whatever, the one constant in my life was that camera lens. It was always there. It never talked back. There was never any judgment. It doesn't applaud or boo or anything. It was just always good to me. And so I did get comfortable at a very young age being on television. The confidence at that age, though, I have to attribute to my family. I was an only child for the first 11 years of my life. My little brother was born when I was 11 and a half. So I got a lot of attention from my grandparents, all my aunts and uncles, my parents. And I was the apple of everybody's eye. So when I put on a performance or did an impression or whatever it may be, long before TV started, I had everyone's undivided attention, and I was always made to feel very special. I was always supported in every single way. I always, when you looked out into the crowd at my basketball games or whatever endeavor, I always had a crew. My whole family was always there to support me. So that is the only way I can explain the confidence that I had as a kid. I just always knew that it wasn't everything too. There wasn't a lot of pressure on it because it was kind of just for fun. It wasn't like it was paying my bills or, you know, the lights were going to turn off if I didn't perform. So it was always, there wasn't a ton of pressure on me for it. It was just meant to be a good time. And when it wasn't, I walked away. When it got to be too much. Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about what you're up to now at NBC 10. You know, we were so fortunate to have an interview with you about, you know, what's going on in real estate in the Metro West. How has COVID and everything going on with the pandemic, how has that affected, you know, your work, and how have you guys pivoted and made changes?
We've pivoted so quickly. It's been amazing to see. For me, I work in the lifestyle side of things, so I typically am out in the field. I'm either at a restaurant or a gym or, you know, discovering a cool new boutique or something like that. So I'm really not at the station all that much and in the newsroom, so I haven't been there in months. So I can't really speak to what's going on in the newsroom. I know they've done an amazing job just because I'm watching from home, seeing people doing the weather from home and the news, and they did it so quickly. For me, I'm lucky because I've been shooting myself for years. I've been working on my own digital channels on Instagram, Facebook. I've been doing shows for the last several years. So I've got my lighting, I've got my tripods. I kind of knew what I was doing. So when the decision was made that we were going to start shooting from home, I was like, it's go time. Let's do this. And I looked at it as a challenge, and I knew we needed to get content on the air. I knew some people weren't going to be able to pivot as quickly as I could. So I was just like, let's go, and trying to come up with all these fun ideas. And I'm looking at it. I mean, I'm a glass half full kind of girl anyway, but I'm looking at all of these challenges as opportunities and ways to grow. I've learned so much in the last 8 weeks or however long it's been. I'm learning new tricks just because I have to. Necessity is the mother of invention, right? And we've even been able to launch a new digital show. I've launched a new digital show with NECN called Mom to Mom. And it just, something that was on my mind for a while, but it was really born in the beginning of this COVID and this pandemic. I just felt like we really needed to get in touch with our moms in our life. I always think it's important to check the pulse of your mom squad, but particularly now with people who may have anxiety or depression or just momming in general is so difficult. So once a week, I sit down like this in this space in my mom cave, actually. And I sit down with another mom and we just dish for a half hour. I'm like, how was your week? What's going on? And they offer tips in their expertise, and we just kind of like commiserate and drink wine and have fun. And so it's been amazing that we've been able to pull that off and launch a successful show in the midst of all this madness.
Is the other mom a friend? Is it someone who you don't know? How are you finding the other moms?
It's been a mixture of both. So I started out with sort of TV friends because I have a lot of those. And I know they're good talkers, and a half hour is kind of a long time to kill. So I started with friends in the TV business. And then it kind of moved into experts, moms who were experts. I sat down with someone who I'd never met before, but she was a mom of 5, and she's been homeschooling her kids forever. Not just because of necessity, like she's a homeschooling mom of 5. So she was great to pick her brain. Tonight I'm talking to Alicia Sacramone Quinn, Olympic gymnast, and now mom of 3. So we're going to talk about staying motivated and staying fit, and she's got an itty bitty baby at home. So it's been all across the board, from bloggers and influencers to experts in various areas. And I hope we can dive deeper into topics. And then my guest just happens to be a mom. But right now we just can't help ourselves. We just want to talk about being stuck at home during quarantine and how we're survival skills.
So I was listening to your, the episode with the mom with 5 kids. Yes. And when you ever mentioned that she was homeschooling all 5 kids, even before the quarantine happened, I was just, it gave me anxiety because I have 3 kids. Trying to homeschool them and work and do all that right now. I'm like, I can't even imagine all year round doing all 5 kids at home. So hats off to her. I mean, it was really amazing to hear.
It is amazing. But she also points out that that's a full-time job, and she has all summer to prepare for it. There are conferences that homeschool parents go to. There's curriculum. They have a plan. We got thrown into the deep end. None of us wanted it. They want it. They choose that path. We got thrown into the deep end, and they're like, hey, teach. And you're like, say what? I'm sorry.
Well, we're trying to teach our kids, but it's funny because the other thing that I've been personally trying to teach myself, I have literally never baked anything probably since you started your news live. I think I might have taken home ec in 8th grade. So I've made cookies, a banana bread from scratch, which has been fun. But I know you're also doing not on TV, but more on social media. You're doing real cooking live, right?
Yes. So Real Cooking Live is like my baby. I love this show. And I especially love how it was born. So before I moved to the Boston area, I lived in LA and I was the host of Good Day LA for almost 5 years. And that was my life. I mean, I was up at 3:30 in the morning every day at the station
Wow.
by 5. I mean, I lived, ate, and breathed Good Day LA. And when I was pregnant with my second, I found myself no longer working at Good Day LA. And it was a little bit of a, whoa, okay, now what? I mean, as you know, we've gone through this. I've worked pretty much my whole life, with the exception of a couple of years off. And my adult life was certainly consumed by television and going from one contract to the next, to the next, to the next, to the next. I was very lucky in that way. So to find myself suddenly going from doing 20 hours of live TV a week to now having a 3-year-old at home and being pregnant with my second kid, I was like, what do I do? Where do I put this energy? I mean, I was like jumping out of a plane every day, adrenaline wise. Where does one put that in a healthy way? So I just kind of like wasn't sure what to do. And when my was born, I was thinking, I miss my audience so much, and I really miss live. I love live TV. That to me is that's my tequila. Like, that's my drug of choice. I love it. It's my thing. So I was thinking, I miss my audience. I really miss being live. I miss that adrenaline rush. And I was in the kitchen cooking, and I had Benny on my arm, and Gracie was up on the counter with me. And I said, you know what? I'm just going to go live. I'm making, I was making this pasta dish, and I was like, let's just see what would happen. Okay. Hi, everyone. Welcome to my crazy kitchen. And I'm cooking live. And it was so fun. And I found that, I mean, I love to cook, but I didn't ever consider myself, an expert. I'm no Martha Stewart. I just do simple, easy, basic, really tasty dishes. And I found that, guess what? That's what my viewers wanted, because they're just like me. They have smoke coming out of their ears half the time. They've been working busy days. They want to come home and cook something in like 20, 30 minutes, and it's healthy and it's good and everyone's happy. So once a week, I've just been sharing my experience in the kitchen with my viewers. And over the years, we went from being in LA with my crazy family, just my crazy family unit, to moving to the Boston area and having to live with my in-laws in their attic. So the show continued, and then I just had a real house full. And now we're finally in our own home here, and we're going through a huge renovation. So everyone's just been like with us through, I think part of it is learning these recipes, and then part of it is just being part of our family. It's a lot of fun. It's a bit of a 3-ring circus, cast of characters. But it's been one of the constants in my life for the last 2.5, 3 years almost. And it's the little show that could. And I hope to create a cookbook from this show one day. That's what everyone's asking for, and that's kind of where I'm putting my energy, as just a sort of labor of love, hobby kind of thing.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So I was watching one of your episodes where you were making a chicken dish, and it was just so cute. Your husband came in, your son came in. It was just so real and natural. And, I felt like you were kind of like either hanging out in my kitchen.
That's the idea. And that's where I got the really imaginative title, Real Cooking Live.
I thought your original Crazy Kitchen title was pretty good too, though.
Originally, I think I kind of called it My Crazy Kitchen. Yeah. And then it was just, people just called it Cooking Live. And then I said it was kind of Real Cooking Live. And I never really wanted to put a title on it, because then it felt too formal almost. I think the fun of it is that it is like the show with no name, and it's not really a show, it's just you're peering into my life. I think if it gets too, my whole thing with, and I could do a whole TED talk on social media and digital media, but with live on digital, I think that if it gets too produced and too fancy, people tune out. Like, they want raw, uncut, unedited, and that's the easiest. So it's the low hanging fruit for me. So I'm like, all right, easy, done. I can be that. I can be unfiltered.
Yeah. I think these days, I think being unfiltered and being yourself and being real and letting people, not into your whole world, but into a piece of your life, I think that really resonates with viewers. So I absolutely agree with that. And I was sitting there watching your show and just laughing because I could just see it, like, my daughter coming in and like just completely interrupting the whole show. It was just great. So
And that was a tame night. I think I know which one you're talking about. And it's been tame during quarantine because I don't have the whole crew here. And so my husband's been like taking the kids away a little bit. So I have a little bit more time with the viewers, but typically it's like a madhouse.
great.
We can relate.
Yeah,
My
exactly.
husband recently with my kids put together a little video for me. And in the beginning of the video, it said, we are grateful for takeout is what it said. And I just started laughing because they don't really appreciate my cooking. So
Oh no.
they are very grateful that we are good at taking out food.
Well, I have a lot of women in my life who say the exact same thing. And that's why I think, on days when I'm like, why am I doing this show? People know how to do this stuff. I realize they don't, and they don't have time and they can't. So I feel like, especially during the quarantine, I want to keep putting out the quick and easy recipes because people really need it right now. And even for someone like me who loves to cook, I'm cooking 21 meals a week now. I can't even think of what I want to make anymore. And I'm supposedly the one that's writing the book on this.
So one question we have for you is when moving from LA to here, are there big differences in, your job and what you're doing and how things, work, whether it's from, do they work differently in LA? Do you feel like things are very different here in Boston or is it, similar?
I think work-wise is very similar. I'm very lucky that I was able to seamlessly go from television in Los Angeles and sort of a lifestyle realm. I mean, I hosted a morning show and it was a news show, but it was more a show. And so moving back to Boston, not knowing Boston the way I know it now, thought I'll probably have to go back into news. I'll kind of have to go that news path, even though I'm more drawn, I think, to the lifestyle world and doing shows and being a TV host. So when I found out that there was a show called The Hub Today and it was focused on lifestyle, everything, I went in like, oh my gosh, that would be so, so perfect. So I'm so lucky that I was able to find a lifestyle show here in the Boston area. And, The Hub Today is perfect. We are the premier lifestyle show and have our finger on the pulse of all things happening in Boston. So it's so exciting. And, but I have noticed, Boston the area is so much different than living in LA. So I lived in New York for almost 10 years, lived in LA, Santa Monica for about 8 years, and now we're here. And for me, I miss the seasons. I know that's going to sound crazy. Santa Monica was a perfect 65 degrees and sunny all year round, which when I first moved there was incredible. But I found time kind of slipping away because you didn't really have the mile markers like you have here. And I grew up in Pennsylvania, so I'm used to seasons. I'm used to snowstorms. I'm used to crappy weather. This is like nothing new. But there's something to be said about like, oh, that was the year that we had that crazy snowstorm, remember? Or, oh, that was the year where it rained all summer, or whatever it may be. It helps create these mile markers in your mind. And I think it helps you attach to memories. And that's all we ever have in life. And there was something about being in Santa Monica that one day, one season bled into the next and one year bled into the next. And it was just all sort of, I don't know. And maybe it was just the job I had too was very intense. So, doing all that live TV and, working in news during some like really heavy stuff I was in over my head. But I love the seasons. I love being back here. To me, it feels so much more like home. I think because it reminds me of Pennsylvania, the houses, real estate wise. The house that we found is a house that I would have seen in my town in Pennsylvania. The air smells like the East Coast. I like the ocean on the East Coast. I feel like I'm home, which is great. I wanted to put down roots with the family, and we are near family now. My husband's family is from the Boston area, so that was really what made our decision to come back. And my goal was that lifestyle would be A+, and then hopefully work would fall into place. I did not think work would fall into place as quickly as it did or as lovely as it has. So I am so, so grateful that I made the leap of faith for the family, and then everything else just kind of fell along in line. Whew.
Well, look, we're thrilled that it all fell into place, and you guys, obviously with your husband's family being here and you originally being an East Coaster, it sounds like it's been a great transition. But curious if there's any tips you can give other buyers who are looking to relocate to the Boston area. What do you got?
Well, I would say start saving your pennies.
From a California person. All right.
Well, all right. I'm gonna be honest. Here's my spiel about real estate. So we were in what I thought was one of the most expensive markets you can be in Santa Monica. We bought our townhouse. We were very lucky. We bought our townhouse, kind of like the late 2000s, I would say. And so we're lucky we got in, but we barely got in. And I thought in my head, we'll cash out at some point when we leave here, because we couldn't cash out and buy another place in Santa Monica. You just couldn't do it. It just was, the prices were astronomical. So we were either going to stay in that condo forever, or I thought we're going to cash out when we move back to the East Coast and we will live like kings. Not exactly. No? Not exactly. So we were able to sell our place, which was great. And yes, our money goes further here for sure. We have a big, beautiful house with a yard. It's 100 years old. It's 1,000,000 years old. It needs everything. So yeah, we were able to get the house we wanted. But yeah, the money did not go as far as I thought it would. And I had sticker shock. I did have sticker shock because we're on the North Shore, and I was definitely surprised how much things were. So kings, we are not. But we are very happy and got a place we love, but we do need to do renovations, and we're going to undergo like a huge kitchen renovation soon. But all these houses in New England, you had to be open-minded. You have to be open-minded. Oh, you wanted advice, right? I went into a whole thing. Be open-minded.
Right.
Be patient. Be patient. Just when you think it's not going to come, it will come. But when you find the house you like, you jump on it. You have to jump on it. When I saw this house that we're in right now, I got the little ping on my phone. There was a house in my area. I called our realtor, and I was at that house 2 hours later, and we had an offer on it by 5 p.m. that night. And that's how it had to go down.
I like it. Be patient. Be patient until it's time to not be patient.
Be patient until it's go time. And then you need to do your research. You need to have seen the houses. You need to go to all the crummy open houses, even for the ones that you know you're not going to like, because you need to have done your due diligence. So when it happens and you get that ping, you're like, oh yeah, that's the right price. That's the right neighborhood. Do not pass go. Do not collect $200. Do not put contingencies.
You learned
Do
well.
not get an inspection. That's something I never heard about either, that we had to deal with, but not doing inspections and having to waive contingencies just to buy a home did surprise me. But you wheel and you deal and you scrap until you get what you want.
And you're happy.
Yeah.
It's funny because when we think of relos, when we meet a relo from California, we kind of say to ourselves, okay, they understand the pricing. They're not going to be, there's not going to be sticker shock, because certain areas of the country, when they come to Boston, and the prices are just really high in these areas. Sometimes it just takes them a little while to kind of get used to what they're seeing and what they're not getting at the price points that they get somewhere else.
Yeah. I mean, I initially did have sticker shock, and then it takes you a while just to immerse yourself into the new area, really look around and see what the right price is. Because I also didn't want to get ripped off either. Although I didn't love living in the attic at my in-laws' house and it was time to go, I wasn't going to pay over what we thought a property was worth. That's just not how we roll. So yeah, it was crazy. And I will say this too. I think that writing a letter to the seller really, really helped in our case. I was completely authentic and honest in what I wrote in the letter. And being that my husband is from this town and we were relocating, we wanted to be by grandparents and everything. Legend has it that we were not the highest offer, that she really loved the letter. And when I did get a chance to meet her, it was the first thing she said to me was, your letter was beautiful, and I just want this family in good hands. And so I think that does go a long way.
I had a seller recently who they were like, I'm not reading the letters. Give me the numbers, give me the terms. There's going to be no emotion. And they told me who they wanted. They had multiple offers and they were going to accept one. And then he said, you know what, let's see the letters out of curiosity. And they changed their mind. So it can be persuasive.
Wow. Yeah. And why not? If you fall in love with a house, it gives you something you just want to put all your effort in. And so that just leaves no stone unturned as far as I'm concerned. Mm-hmm. But yeah, so we moved in a year ago. We've been in here just over a year now. So
well, good luck with the kitchen renovations.
In a quarantine, in a pandemic.
Well, let us know how it goes, because we're due for a kitchen renovation in the next couple of years as well. So
I'm so excited. I'm going to build the kitchen and set of my dreams.
Love it.
That's great. Yeah. So Maria, for all the youngsters out there, now it's all about, YouTube, and, you see all these younger kids doing, interviews and videos and just starting really young. Any advice that you have for them, since you started so young and it's just been, a zooming success?
I'd say keep doing what you're doing. I would say to young people, you are at such an advantage because you have access to broadcast anytime, anywhere. And I know when I went to Syracuse, and when I graduated, I would always sit down with people who had just graduated who wanted to be in television in some capacity. And they would say to me, how do I get my first job in TV? I want to be on air. And I'd say, well, it's kind of a catch-22, because in order to get a job, you need to be on tape. And in order to be on tape, you kind of have to be on TV. Uh-huh. So my advice always to them would be, and this is the old days, I'd say, go rent a camera from school. They would have cameras that you'd have to rent from like a cage, and you print them out like a library book. Go get a camera and set it up and go do a fake news story. Just, make something up, or go to a lacrosse game and just shoot yourself doing play-by-play, or whatever your interest is. Get yourself on tape, and then see if you can get an agent through that, or start sending it to local stations or whatever it may be. Kids nowadays have access to all of this. They can be on YouTube. They can have their own YouTube show. They can be, having a presence on Instagram or TikTok or whatever it may be, and have a body of work. They can have an actual body of work to show to a potential employer. So I would say just keep doing what you're doing. But as always, and this goes for anybody, just be authentic to who you are, and it completely will shine through. Do things you're interested in. I like cooking. I'm not a professional, but I like to do it. So when I'm doing it, it comes through with authenticity and love and realness. So find things that interest you and just go for it. And in the end, you're going to end up with this body of work, and it may take you to the craziest of places.
Maria, you just brought me back to like a time warp. So I went to school I went to school in DC, and I interned for George Michael's Sports Machine. And and he gave me very similar advice. He told me, he's like, take out the camera from school and go film something. So I went down to the cherry blossoms when they were in bloom in DC and filmed a story. And I was interviewing the tourists on the street. And like, oh, what's this for? And I like told them it was for the school TV station, which it wasn't. And tried to put together a whole demo reel the exact same way. So
Which it wasn't. I love that.
No, it wasn't.
Gotta fake it till you make it, as they say. Well, and we used to do the opposite. So when I first started after college, my first job was at MTV. And I was a VJ for MTVU, which was their college station. And so it was kind of a startup, even though we were under the MTV umbrella. We were still kind of a startup, and I still felt like I was in college for almost 3 years after college. I was going on spring breaks. I probably went to 100 different college campuses, and I'm not exaggerating, to do shows on location. So we would be on college campuses, and we would be out in, like, say we were in Atlanta or something, we'd be out on the streets interviewing people, and they'd say, what are you shooting? And we were always told, don't say it's MTV. Just say you're a college. We're just doing something for the local college. We kind of were. We're just doing something with the,
Oh, that's awesome.
Or whatever. Because we just didn't want to be hassled with like all this paperwork and stuff. So we're like, we're just a college production. And we would do that in New York City a lot too, because there's all types of red tape. So if we were in Times Square or Bryant Park or something, I'd just be like, we're just a college, we're just doing something for school. Okay.
Amazing. I love it.
I probably can pull it up now, but
no, that's all right. But all right, so you did spring break. You were the world's youngest broadcaster. You've interviewed Michael Jordan. You've had such a variety of different opportunities and worked with a lot of notable people. Give us like a fun experience or something, unique that happened that we would all get a chuckle about.
Oh my gosh. It was all unique. I mean, how crazy. I've sat next to some of the best broadcasters in the business. I hosted live with Regis Philbin when Kelly Ripa was on maternity leave. That I was in college when I did that. So
wow. To
work with Regis, who I consider like broadcast royalty, legend. I worked alongside Ryan Seacrest. This is an interesting one. So Ryan Seacrest, who's done pretty well for himself. I think his first job in TV was with me. So he was 18 and I was 13. And at that time I was seasoned because I started at 11 and he had come from radio because he was working in radio very young as well. But he was segueing into television, and he and I hosted a show together called Gladiators 2000. Mm-hmm. And so I went to LA for the summer, and he was moving to LA from Atlanta to try to make it in TV and landed this job, Gladiators. And funny thing is, he was 18, I was 13. We did not have a lot in common. And he was taking it really seriously. And I was like, whatever, it's just summertime. But he was friends with Mario Lopez, who was on Saved by the Bell, and that was important to me. Mm-hmm. So Mario would come by set, and I'd be like, oh my God, 8 years later in here, now you have my attention. But over the years, I have kept in touch with Ryan a bit. He came on Good Day LA when I was hosting. Actually, on my first day, he called in. He's obviously does radio in LA, and so everybody knows him there. And he called in to wish me luck and everything. And I sent him a note when he got the gig with Kelly. So there's definitely some crossover there. Maybe somehow I'll wind up back on there with him one day if Kelly wants to take another break.
Sure.
Last time I filled in, she was pregnant. I don't think that will happen again. Oh, what else? I was on the Tonight Show with Jay Leno in his first year as host of the Tonight Show. So that is insane. I just feel like sometimes I feel like Forrest Gump, like I've lived all these different, when he recounts history, he's like, oh, I was there. Oh, I did that. And people are like, but how is that possible? For example, in 1994, maybe it was, I was covering the U.S. Figure Skating Championships. I was about 12. And I was there with Christy Yamaguchi. I was doing something with her for ABC Sports. And that was where Nancy Kerrigan was attacked. And of course, at the time, I was there, like on the ice, and there was all this commotion. And at that point in time, I don't know, we had been on the ice, and then we were kind of just around. And there was this talk of there's a madman on the loose, and there's there's a lot of rumors at first. Nobody knew what was going on, and then there was a press conference. And my dad's like, let's sneak into the press conference. So he and I snuck in. There was like a little curtain around it, and we peeked in, and they were just getting details of what happened. Nobody knew anything initially. But to think like, oh my gosh, I was there. These are moments in history that
is a true Forrest Gump moment.
Totally. That's my Forrest Gump moment. So
love it.
Yeah, just all types of stories I've got.
Well, it sounds like you really had such a fun, youth and growing up, and you got to experience a lot at a young age.
I did. I saw a lot of things. I've lived to tell the tale.
Who was your inspiration at a young age? Like, since you started in TV so young, like, who did you look up to and want to be?
Strangely, as a kid, I actually didn't see myself being a journalist or being in television. When I was a kid, I wanted to be a doctor. I wanted to be a dermatologist. So I always looked at television as sort of a side hustle. Of course, I didn't know that language. No, I looked at it as like a, just for fun. It was almost like playing sports. It was like a extracurricular. I didn't look at it as a career path until I got much older, probably around the time I went to Syracuse and realized, yeah, I'm probably not going to go to medical school. That seems like a lot. Everyone says I'm pretty good at this TV thing, and they've got a great broadcast journalism school. I guess I'll go, I guess I'll do that. And the only reason I went to Syracuse was because they sent me a letter when I was on the Tonight Show and said, if you're ever when you're thinking about college, don't forget Syracuse University. So I remember that. And so I only applied to one school. Kids don't do that. That's a very bad idea. And of course, my parents couldn't buy that letter. So that did me no good. What was the question?
No, I just said, who was your inspiration?
Oh, the inspiration. So growing up, I loved female comedians, I'd say, was probably my inspiration. I grew up watching Carol Burnett with my grandma, and my favorite show, even as a 12-year-old, and this was on in reruns back then, was the Mary Tyler Moore Show. Mm-hmm. Hence my M back there. That's for Mary. But she worked in a newsroom. And so I always loved, I think I had an affinity for female comedians kind of thing. But my real inspiration was the people around me. It was my cheerleaders. It was my family. It was the people in the stands that I talked about earlier. That is my support system. They always have been. They always will be. I have the best aunts and uncles. My grandparents have passed on. It's been a long time now, but like my aunts and uncles I'm on the horn with like all of them all the time. They're following me on all my endeavors. They're always in the audience on my cooking show and Mom to Mom, my TV stuff, you name it. They are in the virtual stands, if you will, cheering me on. So I always drew inspiration from my grandparents and my family, and they're all super hard workers. And yeah, I think that was kind of my world back then.
Well, it's amazing, and we're having fun. As I said, I actually kind of remember you from American Gladiator or the Gladiator show. I was a 13-year-old kid who loved American Gladiator. So when they made a show about American Gladiator for kids, I loved it. So I went back and oh my God, this was the girl who was the host. I put it all together. So we had a lot of fun digging through things like that. But but obviously following you and watching the success has been, you know, it's just really impressive and really amazing. So we're proud of you, and we're not even your family. So
Thank
I'm
you.
sure they're your best cheerleaders.
I feel like I should get a shirt or something, because I have a lot of moments like that where people are like, "You're that girl from TV." And I'm like, yes, it takes them a minute to place where it is. And like I said, my Forrest Gump moments, I've been in a lot of different places, whether it be a red carpet or a news show or a TV show or a travel show. And so you're not really sure. So I'll see someone at the grocery store and they're like, did we go to high school together? I'm like, no, try again. And then they're like, oh, you look like that a girl I've seen on TV. You know, like, you must have been much taller though.
Well, we are certainly in your virtual stands. We'll be cheering you on, and I'm sure that I will learn a lot from you in the kitchen. I have a lot to learn.
Oh, you'll get the hang of it. It's easy. I do easy stuff. You'll love it.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
My husband's sneaking in now because we share an office, which has been really interesting. Makes for great water cooler conversation.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Well, thank you
Maria,
for doing that so much.
Thank you so much for coming on. We really have enjoyed this. We feel like we learned so much about you, and we just, like I said, we have a career crush on you. So we'll keep cheering you on. But thank you. We appreciate it.
I love you guys. You're such a captive audience for all my old stories.
We're enjoying them.
Anytime.
All right. Well, thank you again. This was awesome. We really appreciate the time and the stories and everything.
Well, thank you. Good luck out there in the real estate world.
Thank you.
Gonna be busy.
All right, Maria. Take care.
Bye, guys.
Bye.